So about this house, the house and the barn were built by Bernard Maybeck in 1907 for Henry Sanger. He was a German professor at UC Berkeley and also a co-founder of the Sierra Club. Michael and I moved into this place 5 years ago, and we love it here. We love it so much, and it had been kind of out of the public eye for so long that we said, how can we share this place? And we feel so honored to A, take care of the place, and B, create a community around it. So anyway, we sometimes we host house concerts here at the barn outside. Sometimes we host house concerts inside the barn. Inside the house in our living room. If you would like to know a bit more about the house and its history, there are some little cards on the table. As soon as we started doing historical research here, we started putting it on a website, and then everyone can see see old pictures of the house and see about the people who have lived here over time. The other thing is, if you would like to see the house sometime, we do like to share it. Today is not a great day for that, but if you email me, you can ask for a tour. We'll give it to you, a little private tour. And then also, if you want to be on our mailing list for our gatherings here, you're welcome to also email me at that email address. Then I'll be sitting at my computer. Tell me where you heard about this, and then I'll know that you're a real person. All right, let's see. That's it. I got a whole page. Now I'm introducing the main event today. Woo! Okay. Lenny is new to me. I've only met him a couple months ago when someone suggested it would be great if he talked here at our barn, and I think that was a great idea. So here's a little about Lenny for those who don't already know everything about him. Leonard Pitt was born in Detroit, Michigan. He narrowly escaped high school and never went to college. He attended art school in Los Angeles, and at age 20, got a lucrative job in one of the country's biggest advertising agencies. Realizing this was a creative dead end, he quit and sailed to Paris, where he took up the study of mime with
Etienne Ducroux.
Thank you. Yes, I won't repeat that. He lived in Paris for 7 years. He returned to the US in 1970 and opened a school of physical theater, attracting students from around the world. Leonard's one-man shows have received critical acclaim. He has performed and taught at theaters and festivals around the world. In 1973, he traveled to Bali to study mask theater. After 1 month of study, his teacher invited him to perform with him in Balinese village and temple festivals. He returned to Bali in 1978 to study mask carving. In 1986, he co-founded Life on the Water Theater, a contemporary performance venue in San Francisco presenting new work by the performing artists. In 1991, Leonard created Eco-Rap, an environmental education program combining ecology and rap music to educate inner city youth about urgent social issues in their own neighborhoods. Leonard has written 6 books, 3 on the history of Paris, a book about today's center of attention, Valentine Greatrakes, an autobiography, and most recently, about to appear momentarily, Letters from My Crazy Uncle, a book of letters from his endearing Uncle Arthur. He has also created a number of short films on Paris, all viewable on YouTube. Simply enter Leonard Pitt Paris. Leonard lives by his motto, Find your inner maniac. All the fun goes to the obsessed. And here is Lenny. When he's finished talking, don't forget, he has a tip jar over there. And we love your generosity. Thank you.
Okay, I'm choosing not to use the microphone. If anyone has trouble hearing me, let me know. I can go louder or I can pick up the microphone. I love things that are incredible, and my intention was to show you 3 things that are totally incredible that I own, but I forgot 2 of them at home. But I'm going to tell you about them. Last year, I was in Paris visiting an old friend of mine, Alexander Gotti, who's a very big historian of Paris. Taught at the Sorbonne for many years. Are you still teaching? No. They're building a new museum in Paris to the 17th century. It's called the Musée du Grand Siècle in the very west of Paris. And he's directing the whole works. I said, if you're going to have in your museum Théophraste Renaudot. He lived in the 17th century on the island not far from Notre Dame. Among his many endeavors, he was a doctor who treated people for free, but he invented the first French newspaper in 1631. I said, are you going to have Renaudot in your museum? He said, of course. He invented the first newspaper. You know what I did? What would you do? I reached over and picked up my backpack, which I would do now if I had it here. I opened it up, took out a folder about this size, and pulled out from that folder an original copy of that newspaper from 1638. I said, for your museum. He fell on the floor. I think he's still there. So he ran over to his computer, got a plan of the museum, and showed me the case where Renaudot will be featured. He said, your newspaper is going to go right in there in the case, and it'll say, gift of Lenny. Great. Now, the other spectacular, incredible thing I have in that same bag that I would pull out and show to you is an envelope, an orange envelope addressed to me in Paris. I got to Paris in late 1962. And the envelope with the name big of the sender was Stan Laurel. Laurel and Hardy. We were friends. Now, the title of my next one-man show is Don't Get Me Started, so I'm not going to go on. But can you imagine, I was friends with Stan Laurel. I sat in his living room with him. So he was writing me. That was great. But today, the other spectacular, the books. Which one is this? Which one is this? Which one is this? I've got 3 volumes here. Okay, that's not the one. The man of the hour, here he is. Valentine Greatrakes. Hands-on healer. We're going to hear his whole story, how he came to this. It's all bizarre, as I say. You're not going to believe a word I say, but every word I say is true. And the proof is there. And then, as we go on, I'll take you into contemporary healing, which I experienced, and it gets even weirder. This is all very weird. So this is him. This is done by a very famous artist of the day, William Faithorn. If any of you know the English philosopher Thomas Hobbes, who wrote a book called The Leviathan, William Faithorn did the frontispiece for that book as well. And when you come up, you can, over here is the cover of this book I'm holding, the title page of this book that I'm holding. So this is the other incredible thing. This is the original book written by Valentine Greatrakes in 1666. This is the book, not a reproduction, not a facsimile, the real book. And you see that image on the table. Here is the original, and it folds out from the book. Can you see? It folds out. Stunning beauty. Stunning beauty. Now, how did I find this book? That's a whole story. But don't get me started. I'll get there. So this is his book. Now, as we'll get into more detail in a little bit, he was observed by somebody in 1666 who wrote a book vouching for him, and this is that book called The Miraculous Conformist by Henry Stubb. And Henry Stubb had an enemy who was Robert Boyle. You all know the name Robert Boyle? High school chemistry, Boyle's law of gases, one of the creators of modern science in the 17th century, a founder of the Royal Society. He was big. There are people who spend their whole lives studying Boyle and writing about Boyle. He addressed this book to Boyle. Boyle was incensed when a friend of his saw this book at the printer and ran out to his house in the country and said, look what he did. Because they were enemies. Stubb and Boyle were enemies. They were on opposite sides politically. And Boyle, he wrote him a long letter about why did you do so? But what now? It says on the front on this page, this is written to Robert Boyle. So he was now implicated in Greatrakes, and he felt he had to go to London to study him to have an opinion. We'll get into that. He did. So, but that book was written in support of Greatrakes. And then we have, this is the attack. Oops. These are all written within a couple of months of each other in 1666. This is a man of the church who wrote, wonders, no miracles. Wonders, no miracles. David Lloyd, he couldn't take him apart fast enough. And yes. Mr. Valentine Greatrakes' Gift of Healing examined. I got all three of the books. How did I get them? Now, these books were printed in February, March, and May of 1666. The following September was what? What happened in London in 1666 in September? The Great Fire. Thousands and thousands of buildings burned down. How many copies must have been lost? And how did I find these? And where? Shh.
Donkeys.
We're going to get there. So I have here all of my notes. And I've got my bifocals. Invented by a doctor. Okay, what I want to do first is describe the land, Ireland. Here's Ireland. We know it's kind of shaped like this. It's not like this, but it's like this. And way down on the south, you have County Cork over here. And just next to it is County Waterford. And you know what separates them? A river called the Blackwater River. And it comes up here. So here's County Cork. Cork is right there. Here's County Waterford. The Blackwater River comes up. That's what separates them. It goes up several miles and makes an abrupt right-angle turn this way. And up there is a village called Cappoquin, where I've been, as was Greatrakes. And his estate was just about a mile below, called Affane, A-F-F-A-N-E. So, he was born in 1628. And in 1641, his mother took the family, because there was so much strife, Catholic, Protestant, terrible, terrible. She fled to England, took the whole family to England. After 5 or 6 years, he writes, I returned to my native country, which was in such a miserable and deplorable state, with strange divisions throughout the kingdom. It was not as before, English against Irish, but now it was English against English, and Irish against Irish, which differences to me seem so unnatural that I resolved not to intermeddle till the mist of confusion was over. And so for refuge, retired myself to the castle in Cappoquin, up there at the top of the river. And he spent a year in solitude. He was so depressed by what he had seen. Where I saw so much of the madness and wickedness of the world that my life became a burden, which brought my life to the threshold of death, so that my legs had hardly the strength to carry my enfeebled body. So it's interesting to see his reaction to the strife that was going on and how he took it in, because not everyone had that kind of a response. So he's living there, and finally, in 1662, he had what he called his first impulse. Now imagine this man, his wife was the local healer, Ruth. She knew all the herbs. When people were sick, they came to Greatrakes' house to see his wife. He's in there. One day he's walking around his land. They did lumber production, apples for apple cider. And he's walking around his land, and all of a sudden he goes, huh? This is how I imagine it from what he says, huh? What is that? Something strikes him. And as he said, about 4 years, gotta put on my, I should just leave him on. About 4 years since, I had an impulse or a strange persuasion in my own mind that suggested to me that there was bestowed on me the gift of curing the king's evil. The king's evil was an illness common at the time, which is a form of tuberculosis, and it affected mainly the upper body, swellings, sores, all kinds of things. He was going to be able to cure the king's evil, which for the extraordinariness of it, I thought fit to conceal. He thought it was so bizarre, I didn't want to tell anybody. But at length, I communicated this to my wife and told her that I did believe that God had given me the blessing of curing the king's evil. But her reply was, she conceived this was a strange imagination. This is like saying, you know what, you're crazy. I got a little sinus. But to prove the contrary, a few days later, William Maher brought a son to my house, desiring my wife to cure him. He had the king's evil. Whereupon I told her that she should now see whether this were a bare fancy of imagination, as she put it, or the dictates of God's will upon my heart. And thereupon I laid my hands on the places affected and prayed to God for Jesus' sake to heal him. And then I bid the parent 2 or 3 days afterwards to bring the child to me, which she did. And then I saw the eye was almost quite whole. And the node, which was as big as an egg, was suppurated, and the throat strangely amended, and within a month discharged, he was perfectly healed. Ta-da. Then shortly afterwards came Margaret McShane, who had the evil 7 years and upwards, which had spread from the bottom of her stomach upwards, all over her throat, neck, and nose, and for all of her back, shoulders, and armpits. To speak the truth, she looked so dreadfully and stunk so exceedingly that she would have affrighted and poisoned anyone almost who came near her. Now there was a doctor visiting the house, Greatrakes' house, that day, and he said to the doctor, "Doctor, please treat her." And he said was, all the men in Ireland could do her no good. Whereupon I said, I did believe there was one that could do her good and cure her. The doctor demanded, who was that man? My answer was that through God's blessing I could. But he alighted of the matter, didn't take it seriously. If he saw that person cured, he would not question, but I might heal all diseases. But I replied I was not of that opinion. For my hand suppurated the nodes and drew and healed the sores, which I formerly could not have endured the sight of, nor the smell of. 6 weeks later, she came back and she was totally fine. Now, what's interesting, he became known. And he's still in his village of a fan. But as he's curing more people, a friend of his told him, You know, censorship was very big in those days. And a friend of his wrote to him and said, I quote, "I wish you to be very careful of what you write and to whom, especially now that letters are so often broke open and exposed to the very scanning and censures of those to whom they were never writ." Now, when Greatrakes, he felt this was a gift of God. And you couldn't do that in those days. Anything coming from God had to come through the church. And that's why the book Wonders, No Miracles says they're wonders, but they're not miracles. And we'll get into that in a little bit. But he had to be very careful. But anyway, so 3 years later, he had a second impulse. A second impulse. I found as formerly the same kind of impulse within me, suggesting that there was bestowed upon me the gift of curing the ague. The ague was a malarial condition with fevers and chills. Now, when he had his first impulse, his wife didn't believe him, but then he cured a lot of people. Don't you think she might go, well, I guess it's real? He has a second impulse. She still doesn't believe it. She doesn't believe it. Next day, Mrs. Bateman came to the house with a violent ague. He lays his hands on her, and she's cured. She returned to her husband and children, and she went away immediately, perfectly cured, quote unquote. 6 months later, he has his third and last impulse. Tells his wife and brother, don't you think they believe him by now? They didn't. They didn't. So he starts curing. Then a couple of weeks later, he went to visit a friend in County Cork who had a terrible ague, a malarial condition with hot, cold, and sweats. For the first time now, strangers begin showing up at the house. They've heard about it. Greatrakes is amazed. And for the first time, now he was a stroker. If you had a pain on your shoulder, he would stroke your body and he would move the illness out your limbs, and they would exit at an extremity, the fingertips. If you had an illness in your head, it'd come out of your eyes, your nose, your mouth, your legs. Interesting also, he said that for years when he was younger, he had terrible headaches. He doesn't say migraines, but he describes it as migraines. And he would often soothe his head, which didn't work. After he began curing, he could just touch his own head, and the headache would go away. So, so now he's amazed, because for the first time, he sees that the pains, as he says, skip and fly through the body. Lord knows, he says, my soul was wrapped with wonder and amazement. My heart melted into tears. Now, there were skeptics. Lots of skeptics. Number one, 1665, down in Youghal. Youghal was at the base of that Blackwater River on the Irish Sea. That was the town. Lionel Beecher. And he writes, having heard of many diseases healed and cured by Valentine Greatrakes of a fan, many of them seemed so strange to me that I could not give credit to the reports till I went up there to see for myself. So he was going to go from Youghal up to a fan. I stood close by him and saw him touch many of the king's evil, and many whom he had cured came to acknowledge it. I saw him heal 8 persons of the dead palsy in their arms and legs, whom after he had touched and stroked them, he caused to be lifted up, and they had instantly the right use of their limbs. I also saw him restore many deaf persons to their hearing, and this only by stroking and putting his fingers into the holes of their ears. Upon the whole, the thing is wondrous, stupendous, and astonishing, and makes us as men in a dream, I should say. But then he got in trouble with the church. Now, Lismore, here's the river, Blackwater, goes up to Captain Quinn, goes over here to Lismore. Beautiful spot. There's a wonderful, wonderful castle there in the village. And the church heard that he was, quote unquote, effecting cures in an extraordinary manner. They asked him if this was true. Those wanting to know, he said, he'd only come to my house for an ocular testimony of the truth. An ocular test. Come see for yourself. And then he said, well, ask those who are treated. And they wanted to know, where's your medical license? So, you know, if you're going to be a doctor, you got it to the church. And if you get your license, people pay you. He's doing it for nothing. It was always free. So they say, what license? He says, I never charge. Is there a law stopping people from helping their neighbors? And then they say, by what authority do you perform these acts? He said, my authority, my own strong imagination. They ordered him to stop practicing. The church ordered us, you better stop practicing. He did for 2 days because the people kept coming. So the bishop summoned him back to the church again and ordered him to at least don't lay your hands on anybody in my diocese. He didn't say anywhere, just not my diocese. And Greatrakes said, but I answered his lordship that I conceive that I transgress no law of God or man in doing the works of charity. And therefore I thought myself obliged, thereby not to deny any man my help that came to me. And so I parted with his lordship and returned to my house, where I persevered in my former practice, both at home, Dublin, and elsewhere. Then the plague hits London. The plague. Oh my God. Crowds of people start going to see Greatrakes. Boatloads sail over from England to Ireland. They dock at Youghal. They go up. And he writes, I shall now return again to the matter of fact by letting you know that great multitudes resorted to me, so that I could have no time to follow my own occasions, nor enjoy the company of my family and friends. Whereupon I set 3 days in the week to lay my hands on all who came, and so continued for some months at home. But the multitudes came daily from the neighboring towns, and I was not able to accommodate them. That's what I forgot. So he moved down to Youghal on the water because he couldn't accommodate all the people. They were camping out at his land. Went down to Youghal. It was much easier. Okay. And finally, the people are coming over from England, fleeing the plague and looking for Greatrakes to help. The magistrates of the town were afraid these people were going to infect Youghal with the plague, so they sent Greatrakes back home up to a fan. And everyone followed him. Everyone followed him. So that my stable, barn, and the malt house were filled with sick people of all diseases. And he says, I do not remember anyone of my family was ever infected by any of them. And he was never infected either. It's all amazing. Now, another skeptic here. 1665 in a Dublin newspaper, a man writes, my curiosity would not permit me to refrain from beholding Mr. Valentine Greatrakes curing all diseases in this town. The multitudes that follow are only for those to believe, that see it. 2 or 3 ships out of England carrying all diseases are most returned well home. He is forced to leave his own house and lives at Youghal through necessity that throng after him. So he did witness. Now, in England, in central England, there's a great estate called Ragley, R-A-G-L-E-Y. And it was owned and lived in by Lord and Lady Conway, Edward and Anne Conway. She was an incredible woman. She had like the Algonquin Round Table of her time. Once a month, she would have all these intellectuals gather at her estate, and they would talk about the big issues of the day. She was well-educated, smart, and she wrote a book on the history of philosophy, but she was not allowed to publish it. You know why? She was a woman. So she had to publish it with a pseudonym of a man. But she suffered from terrible migraines. And Lord Edward He had heard of Greatrakes. Word was over. And he worked to get Greatrakes to come over to Ragley. I mean, it's in Derbyshire. It's long. And this is like January. It's cold. And there's, I don't want to go. He said, I wouldn't go anywhere for any lord, no matter who. But they pulled, he goes over. And on his way there, he stops in the town of Worcester, which is about halfway there. And in Worcester, he spends the night, spends a couple of days, and he cured a lot of people. A lot of people. And it's going to get very interesting soon. Well, he gets to Ragley. Large numbers of people are expecting him. They stand there greeting him as he comes in. He treated Anne Conway, and he could not do her any good. He could not. And as he said, many people I cured, many people I did not. And he didn't know how he did it. We'll see, there's lots of speculation. Some people thought it was what they called sanative contagion. If you're ill and you can spread your illness to somebody else, what if you're so healthy that you can spread your health to other people? Contagion. Sanative contagion. So, but even though he could not cure Anne Conway, Lord Edward, he vouched for him because he saw so many cures, and he writes about one, quote, "The boy was covered from head to toe with leprosy, which had been judged incurable for 10 years. And in my chamber, he cured him perfectly. That is, from the moist patches, they dried up and began to fall off. The itching was quite gone, and the heat of it taken away. The youth was transported to admiration." Henry Stubb, who wrote this book, and who was a guest there at the Conways, in his book he writes, quote, "I saw him stroke a man for a pain in his left shoulder. Upon his stroking, the pain moved instantly into the deltoid muscles. Being stroked there, it returned to the shoulder again. Upon a second stroking, it flew to the elbow, thence to his wrist, thence to his shoulder, and into his fingers, whence it went out upon his last stroking, so that his arm moved vigorously every way." Mysterious, mysterious, mysterious. Stubb was certain that Greatrakes' healing powers was in part due to the makeup of his body. And as proof, he cited reports of Greatrakes' body exuding a sweet aromatic scent. They even got containers of his urine, and it smelled like violets. They were trying everything. One morning, Edward Conway entered Greatrakes' room and observed a smell strangely pleasant, as if it had been of sundry flowers. He asked the servant, "Did you bring any flowers into his room or any sweet water?" "No, we did not, nothing." Okay, so a month later, Stubb comes out with The Miraculous Conformist, and he's got something on the title page of the book. In those days, there were aphorisms in Latin summing up the entire position of the book. That was very common. And for Stubb's book, the aphorism translated into English, "Because the obscure cannot be understood, does not mean that the obvious should be denied." Think of that. How beautiful. Because the obscure cannot be understood does not mean that the obvious should be denied. How true, how true, how true. But Boyle, now that he's been implicated in this, he's incensed. He goes to London. "I got to meet Greatrakes because I got to have an opinion." And he brought all of his scrutiny to bear. And in my book, I've got a list of 17 issues he's looking for. How tall is he? How much does he weigh? Does he do this? What are his hands like? Blah, blah, blah. And Boyle himself, with all of his scrutiny, he ended up signing 7 affidavits. And here he is right here, Robert Boyle. This is one of them. Here, I'll read it to you. April 26, 1666. Anne Kelly of Shalingate in the parish of Old Windsor, 21 years old, hath had the dead palsy 14 years on the right side, not able to go nor lift her hand to her head. She was first touched by Mr. Greatrakes at the beginning of April, who found ease the first day she was touched, and so got strength more and more every day. And now, being the 26th of April, 66, she goes well without help of any stick, and hath very good use of her right arm, heretofore useless, only she goes as if her right leg were somewhat shorter than the left. All amazing. So, Greatrakes, he was going to go back to a fan in Ireland. He spent a month there at the Conway residence, Ragley. Now, you know, I did all this research, I must tell you, with Ian Bull, who can't be here today, but where's Jill? There's Jill back there, Jill Bull. Her husband and I did all this research together. We went to Ireland every year for 8 years. Once I went twice in 1 year. Can you imagine? They walked his land. We go into a little village around there and try and find the oldest person around. Every year, Valentine Greatrakes. Anyway, he got into. Ian and I were having breakfast one morning in a bed and breakfast, and I forget the gentleman's name, but he said, "Oh, that stuff's been going on here for years, years." He told us about Jimmy the Bone Setter. Sounds like a mafia hitman. He was the healer down the road. Oh, my friend, he had a terrible back thing. Jimmy came in, put his hands here, and went, "It's fine." Jimmy the Bone Setter. Then he told us about down the road, this woman had a prize-winning racehorse, but it got sick, and they got the finest vets. They even got vets from Kentucky to come over to Ireland to treat the horse. Couldn't do anything. But they got a hold of what's her name, Mary so-and-so down the road. She came over with a bottle of goop, put it on the horse's forehead, got better. Got better. Strange things that are beautiful. So Ian and I were in Ragley. We got a picture in the book. And we met this man who's like the Count. Totally nose upturned snob. And he never heard of Greatrakes. And his stunning comment was, "Well, I did go to the library once to look up the family history, but there were too many pieces of paper." Too many pieces of paper. He let it go. But while he's there, Greatrakes is going back to a fan, and he gets word that well, he goes back to Worcester, and the people there were so grateful for what he did when he was going the other way. They throw a huge celebration for him. And we know who bought the wine. What? I turned my phone off.
That's the person who bought the wine.
Wait a minute. Come on.
Maybe it's Valentine calling.
Yeah, maybe it's Valentine.
Yeah, exactly.
So he's at Worcester, and they're throwing this big party for him. And who shows up from London? King Charles I. He was in power. I mean, King Charles II. King Charles I. We know what happened to him, don't we? Now it's King Charles II. And the Lord Arlington, this is like the vice president. He goes all the way to Worcester and says, "You're being summoned to London. The king wants you to be examined by the royal physicians to see if what you're doing is really real." Well, he better get to London. And he got to London. He gets to London, and someone writes, oh yeah, as Greatrakes said when he was taken to London, he said, "I was glad to be freed from the great crowds at Worcester, where I was likely to be bruised to death." He was like Elvis. People couldn't get enough. So he gets to London, and philosopher Joseph Glanville wrote, pardon me, "The great discourse now at the coffee houses and everywhere is about Mr. G, the famous Irish stroker. He undergoes various censures here, some take him to be a conjurer and some an impostor, but others again adore him as an apostle. I was 3 weeks with him at Lord Conway's and saw him, I think, lay his hands upon 1,000 persons. And really there is something more to it than the ordinary. I've seen pain strangely fly before his hand, till he has chased them out of the body. Dimness cleared and deafness cured by his touch. Was it sanative contagion? They wondered. Then he met this great courtier and poet, Sir John Denham. He's presented with Joseph Warden. He was stroked until he came in on crutches, walked up and down very lustily without them, and so departed. A little bit of stroking. And then on and on and on. Anyone know the poet Andrew Marvell?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Great. Well, he was a supporter of Greatrakes. So was Henry Moore. He was Isaac Newton's teacher and the first to translate Descartes into English. He vouched for Greatrakes. Thomas Sydenham, the father of modern clinical medicine and the most respected physician of the era, vouched for Greatrakes. They went and, of course, witnessed. Here's a woman who had breast cancer. Dorothy Pocock, April 1666. Dorothy, the wife of John Pocock, age 45, had a tumor in her breast about August 65, which in the beginning of April was grown so big as a large egg and thought by many physicians and surgeons to be a cancer, and no other way of curing it than by cutting out, and was stroked twice by Mr. Greatrakes, and after the second time, the tumor was grown softer, so that he opened it, and out thereof flowed a great quantity of concocted matter. And after that, by gentle stroking, Mr. Greatrakes brought forth the bag wherein the matter had lied out of a small orifice, and she professes herself to be very well of her breast, and also to be freed of a great pain, which she had had for the space of 8 months last past. On and on and on and on. So now comes along David Lloyd, who writes his book, Wonders No Miracles. This is the attack on Greatrakes. Where do you fit him in with Christ and the apostles and all their miracles? And that's why he calls his book Wonders No Miracles. And he accuses him, he calls him a miracle monger, a cheat. Writes of his quote-unquote brute impulses that are madness, the method of Satan, contrary to the nature of man. It must be known that Lloyd had written a book about 2 years earlier, a scurrilous attack on another person, and it got him in jail for 1 year. So he had a history of this, but he really laid into it. And then, of course, there's potential sedition here. Sedition. If he succeeds, now, the king's evil, I must tell you. It was very common at the time. And the kings of that era, hundreds of years, their power was alleged to come to them from God. God gave them the power to be king. And the way they prove that is that once a year, they put up posters around town. Anyone with the king's evil come to the corner of Rose and Grant. And the king would be seated there in a chair with the priest next to him. And hundreds would line up with the king's evil. And he would touch them on the forehead. And allegedly that cured them. And that was to show that the king's power came from God. Maybe 1 or 2 out of the hundreds would get cured, just because sometimes people did get cured. But all of a sudden, Greatrakes is having great success curing the king's evil. Is he trying to undermine the power of the king? This is sedition. This is sedition. If he succeeds in diminishing the king's gift of healing and makes it appear that the king could do no more than other men, people would conclude that he should be no more than other men. Greatrakes, when he saw this, he confronted him with 2 doctors. And they said to him, you don't know Greatrakes. You've never seen him, so why he never seen him. Why the attack? Lloyd should come to his house to witness the cures himself, so that he might be able to relate the truth, since he had such an itch to write. Lloyd promised to visit, but he never did. Greatrakes writes in a brief account about the book, wherein the author takes to represent me in such black characters, as if I were so horrid a monster, that my very name should affright the reader. Okay. So, he lived on. Died in 1683. Now, yep. Don't get me started. How did I find the books? I began working on this. There was no internet. Now, I must tell you today, there is a site called the Internet Archive. You go there and you see all these books have been digitized completely. You can read a brief account by Valentine Greatrakes. Go through the entire book as if you held the book in your hands with the original print. It's all there. And many, many other books, but none of that existed then. So, I will tell you how I came upon this, all by accident. Ian Boll, he can't be here today. He's one of the great historians of science. He lives just down the street. He's Irish. What a beautiful coincidence. And he knew everything I wanted to know, because I've always been intensely interested in history. And for those years I was interested in the formation of the modern Western mind. How do we view the world? And where did that come from? The world view in Greek times was different. They had many gods. Become the one God. Well, I never went to college. I had no one to talk to, no associates, no colleagues. And Ian knew everything I knew. I wanted to know. So we made a deal to meet at the French Cafe, the French hotel, once a week, religiously. And then I'd have someone I could ask questions to. He could question me. And he gave me stuff to read. And he gave me a book to read on the history of 17th century medicine. And there was a footnote in this book. And this is the footnote that changed my life. And all it said was, Valentine Greatrakes, a 17th century Irish healer. And I said, healer? It didn't say quack or charlatan. It didn't say healer in quotes. It said healer. I said, did it really heal? Whoa. And I go, yeah. And the next day, the gods are playing on me now, because the next day I'm at the corner of Cedar and Shattuck, and I bump into an old friend of mine who knows about research. And he knows history. I said, God, I saw this weird footnote yesterday. Valentine, well, maybe he wrote a book. I said, a book? He's just a footnote. Well, if he did write a book, it'll be in the BLC. You all know what the BLC is. I didn't know either. The British Library Catalog lists every book ever printed in the English language. I said, well, I got to go to London to see them. No, they got it on campus at Doe Library. In libraries, they scare me. No, he said, come on, I'll take it. I'm going there tomorrow. So we walked into Doe. And there's the BLC, 200 volumes. I walk over. No, I'm getting it. I go to the G's. There were 5 entries under Greatrakes. These 3 books and 2 newspaper articles. Oh, one was a poem defending him. And I said, where can I see these? Well, you got to go see the so-and-so and so-and-so, which is 700 volumes, where it shows you where all these books, original copies, exist in America. So we go in, and I put Greatrakes. Well, there was an original copy of his book, A Brief Account in L.A. Come on. But The Miraculous Conformist by Henry Stubb, there was an original copy at
Oh, Shakespeare's.
Stanford. And Ian was teaching at Stanford then. So I called him that night. I said, Ian, well, I'm going down tomorrow. We'll go down together. Get in the car, go down. He goes up to teach. I go to the rare book room. You understand the atmosphere of a rare book room is unlike any room you've ever been in. The concentration, it's taut. The air is taut. They bring me this book in a little box. You're wearing gloves. I open it up, so, it's a small book. I go through it, and I'm reading this. You know what I did? I did the dumbest thing in the world. The dumbest thing in the world. This young girl, it must have been her first day on the job. You know what I said to her? I'm ashamed to tell you, but it's so stunning I will. I took the book and I said, can you make a Xerox copy of this book for me? And you know what? She did. You don't take these books and open them up like that, all the way, flatten them out. But she made me a copy. On the car back, I'm reading at the end, and when he sees that Boyle's in there, Boyle, and Ian got very interested immediately. And we went back to the French Hotel. We're sitting there, and we're going over this and reading out of the cures and whatnot. And I said, Ian, we can't let this out of our heads. We have to do something. I said, we have to write a book. He said, we have to make a movie. And we shook hands. And the second we shook hands, I had one of the strangest feelings of my life. And I didn't tell this to anybody for a long time. My hand was in his hand. I felt my arm go over my shoulder, reach out, and touch Greatrakes' hand. How can you explain that? I was looking here. My hand was here. I touched and I knew. Well, it turns out I wrote the book on my own. And when the book came out, you know what amazed me? My book and his book. Isn't that amazing? That's amazing. Both the same size. Stunning, stunning, stunning. What a gift. What a gift. Now, I must tell you, so these are up here, these are like 20 bucks. I always say writing is rewriting. And I've read the book a lot to refresh my memory on all this stuff. And the trouble in studying history is that one thing leads to another. And if your area of study is here, but then you get up towards the edge, and you risk finding something super interesting right here at the edge. And it's so interesting you can't let go. So you keep following it, it takes you out here. And then it takes you out here and here and here and here. I get into that some here. So I get off in English, Irish history, but I get back about 140 pages, 148, just so you know. Anyway, so that's when we started going over. And if I had my pictures, I would show you the land. His house no longer exists, but a house is built there in the 19th century on the same land. And walking around there and across the road, there's the old church from Greatrakes' time with the burial plots, with cemetery right there. His grandson is buried right there. We thought that was the church where he had worshiped. But to be down there is amazing, I gotta say. So, all of this, but 8 years. Can you imagine going to Ireland for 8 years? And this is before, what do they call the Celtic something or other? Some years ago they started doing really well. The Celtic, that's something, but because when that started, they started redoing a lot of the little villages and putting in strip malls. And that was sad. That was sad. But still, the Emerald Isle, you've never seen green until you've been to Ireland. It's really stunning, and I will go back there in a second. Anyway, so with this in my head, we get into more contemporary healing. There used to be a woman who lived here in Berkeley named Lisby Mayer, lived on North Side. And she directed a show that still goes on at Christmas time called Christmas Revels. You know Christmas Revels?
Yes, it's wonderful.
They put on these wonderful performances, period pieces, almost like Dickensian, with great music and everything. And Lisby directed the show. And her daughter, who was about maybe 11 or 12, played in the music group. And she played what instrument? The Celtic harp. Could it be any better? And one year she left her harp in the basement of the church overnight. She never did that before, and it was stolen. The police said, objects like that of value, forget it, they're gone. You'll never see it again. This was like losing a member of the family. So now we're going to get into really strange stuff here. And months later, someone tells Lisby about a dowser. A dowser. And she says, you know what? A good dowser can find lost objects at a distance. Hard to believe? So she was given the name Harold McCoy, Fayetteville, Arkansas. She gives him a call. He says, you know, I got a feeling that harp is still around. I got a feeling that harp would send me a map of your area. She sends him a map of the East Bay. Pardon me while I have one of these. He calls back and says, I think I've located your harp. He says, go down this freeway here, get off here, take a left turn, go right. Fourth house on the right. She goes out there looking at the house. What would you do? Knock on the door? No, she didn't dare. She put up flyers around the neighborhood. Stolen harp. Reward. No questions asked. And she got a call a few days later from someone who said, I don't have the harp, but my neighbor does. And it was in the house next door to where Harold indicated. They met in the parking lot for the Safeway in the neighborhood. She gave him an envelope with some money. She got the harp back. But better yet, you think that's something? Harold was a healer. So Lisby was so taken. She had an evening at her house, big living room, almost like this. And she knew a lot of people in the healing world, body people, this, that. She has them all come over, and Harold talks about his experience. And it's very moving. And he was because he was in the area. He came here because his wife had family in Walnut Creek, and they came out, so we got to meet him. So Greatrakes kept a diary, and we knew where that diary was through the 17th and the 18th. It got lost in the 1800s. And but we knew it was still around. And Harold doused a map of Great Britain, and he gave us a spot in Scotland. Can you imagine we went there? But we were in a hurry. We went into one house, that he indicated were sitting in the living room. Woman said, we have nothing in the attic. No, nothing. But there was a big old farmhouse down the road. He said it was in an attic, but we were too much, we didn't have time to go up, so it could still be there. But Harold gave this talk in front of all these people. And there was a woman in the group from San Francisco who was from a very wealthy, known family. I don't remember the name, but she was so impressed by everything he talked about. She gave him a large chunk of money. And he created the Ozark Research Institute, which you can find online. And they're still functioning. Harold has since passed, but his wife Gladys, who I met, she's still around, she helps operate. And they put on all kinds of workshops that are open to people. And you can do things online. Ozark Research Institute, if you're interested, look into it. Now here's the punchline. Harold could cure from a distance. He said, I had a friend, Taylor, young woman. She was bipolar, on heavy medication. And I saw her one day at the cafe. And she said, yeah, I'm on this medication. It's so unpleasant. Ooh. I gotta take it. I said, well, maybe Harold could do something for you. Really? Yeah, give him a call. I gave her his phone number. She called him up. He said, okay, I'll work on you. Time goes by. I didn't see you for a couple of weeks. Taylor, how's it going? I don't feel any better. Really? Call him back. She called him back. He said, I'll work harder on you. I didn't see her for about a month. Taylor, how's it going? I'm all better. I started getting off my medication. My psychiatrist doesn't understand it at all. I have no symptoms. I'm fine. I don't need any more at all. And she goes on to this day. Then I talked to her like 10 years later. Oh, then here's, I forgot. Can't forget this. One day I did this presentation in my house for 17 people who I could get sitting in my living room. And wait a minute. Was it? Afterwards, someone says to me, Lenny, there's a Russian healer in town. He's staying at my place. Elena, was that you by any chance? I don't remember. Could have been. Could have been. There's a Russian healer in town. I'm having some people over. Come on over. I go over. A lot of people. Here's a Russian. He was a physicist. Somehow he became a healer. And two striking things happen. He gets everyone in a circle. And he goes by everybody like this. His hands going like this. And he would tell everyone something about their state. He came to me and he said, you are a healer, but you don't know it. Now, I didn't tell anybody that for many years. And as I say in the book, when I finally put it in there, there were not enough exclamation points in my computer to register my surprise. And I'm still seeking to find out how I can implement what he said. But he took a young woman who was in the crowd, and she lives right here on Cedar, off of Shannon. He said, I want to see you over here. Come in this room. Stand over there. And he scanned her body. And he said, you've got cancer of the breast. And it's right here. And he pointed to the spot where it was. And she went to the doctor. And he was right. Got it out. The world is big. I've got one friend at the cafe where I go to the French Hotel every day. I tell him, he says, you can't hear this. It's not my yoga. That's his line. It's not my yoga. Come on. I mean, proof is proof. Life is big. I say, be open. Be open. My motto, find your inner maniac, all the fun goes to the obsessed. So I got onto this, and I got onto this, and this, and this, and this, and this, you know. So for someone who never went to, you know, I didn't know how to write a book. Just to let you know, this is 4 walks through Paris with hundreds of photos, before and after. And you might know the name Haussmann. He's a man who took Paris and redid it beginning in 1853, tore down 20,000 buildings, built 40,000 new buildings, put in all the modern avenues and boulevards. I document that here through 4 walks. And then this one is part 2. Other walks documenting the same subject. And the fun is doing something you don't know a thing about. I recommend it. I didn't know what I was doing, but I wouldn't let that stop me. Like you follow your interest and you learn while doing it. Then this book, just to show you, these are hundreds of my postcards from my collection. No one knows it. Interesting fact, the invention of the postcard in 1871 changed the world. Just like the internet. Because it facilitated communication in a way that had never existed before. You could just scribble a few words down there, I'll be there. Before, to communicate, you spent a whole morning writing a letter. There were books, courses people took on how to write a letter. And you know, in those days, there were 9 or 10 deliveries per day, 7 days a week. So if on a Saturday you're going to visit your family in Marseille from Paris, you write a postcard, I'll be on the train at 6, put it in the Paris post office box at 10 in the morning, it'll get down to Marseille at 2 in the afternoon. And they'll be there to meet you. Anyway, this is that whole history. And at its height, because it became a phenomenon, postcard, the French were producing how many postcards? 1 million a day.
Woo.
A day. A day. It's all in here. And then this is my checkered life. I call it my brain on fire, and my brain is on fire. But you see, I got my story about Stan Laurel in here, how I knew him, and all my other exploits that are all very different. Anyway. And I think, God, it's 10 minutes to 3. How are we doing with time?
You're good.
Want to take any questions? Is there any questions? Question, yes.
How did you get those books?
Oh, thank you.
Can you repeat the question?
How did I get the books?
Sticky fingers?
I was performing a lot in these days, and a one-man show of mine called Not For Real, I was performing in Philadelphia. And the National Library of Medicine is in Bethesda, Maryland. And I went there to see an original copy of the Greatrakes book. They had it there. And that's when I decided I wanted a copy of my own. I saw this book, so I needed the portrait. I needed it. This is a 24-hour-a-day preoccupation. And every year, going to Ireland, Ian and I would go into all the antiquarian booksellers. I would. And the worst thing you can say if you walk into a place like that, when they say, "May I help you?" if you say, "Oh, I'm just looking," you don't know. Then that's like, you're nobody. But if you walk in and say, "I'm looking for a brief account by Valentine Greatrakes, 1666, that specificity, man, and no one ever heard of the book. They admire you, they take you serious, but no one had ever, I'm looking. So one day, on Market Street in Paris, there was a bookseller, Thomas Goldwasser, up on the 3rd floor, not far from Powell Street. And he had all these books on the history of medicine. Leather-bound books. I'm walking in, not a dream of ever finding that book there. It's impossible. And I'm walking, all these leather-bound, beautiful. And then, oh, here's his catalog. Pick it up, go through it. What? Excuse me. Yeah. He said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I just sold it." But I may have another copy. Give me your number, I'll call you if I do. That was in March. April, May, June, July, August, nothing. I figured he didn't have it. So one day I'm walking down Market Street. I said, "Oh, stop in." Go upstairs, looking around. He walks in. I said, "Oh, did you ever find that book?" He said, "Oh, I did." Now, what would you say?
Why did you call me?
No. Why didn't you call me? He said, "Can I see it?" "Yeah, it's in the vault," he says. "Follow me." And he walked like this. This is how he walked. And I'm behind him, and he opens the vault, and he pulls down a brief account, and he had a copy of The Miraculous Conformist by Stubb. The Miraculous Conformist was $850. The Greatrakes book was $3,000. Come on, we got money put away for a rainy day, but come on. I said, "It's a Stubb book, I'll take it." The Greatrakes book, $3,000. I'll think about it. I was going on tour. I'll be back in 2 weeks. I'll let you know. And I go off. I forgot where I went, but I went to all the antiquarian bookstores. Never heard of it. I come back. I took it. So I had 2 of the 3. How did I get the 3rd one? There was a bookseller in Stanford reading books, antiquarian. And his son contacted me and told me that in the 1950s, his father was researching Greatrakes. In the 50s. I said, "Well, can I talk to him?" "I'm sorry, he's gone gaga. He's very old now." Okay. And then about a week later, he calls me and says his father passed away. And they were going through all of his books, and they got to the shelf of Kate Greenaway books. You know Kate Greenaway? Wonderful author of children's books. And fallen down behind her books were all 3 volumes of the Greatrakes book bound together, unseen for decades, likely. They're there. He's got it in his hands. I bought it. It wasn't that expensive. And I had it taken apart, and I kept the Wonders No Miracles, and I sold the other two to Ian, so now he has them. So that's how I got all three of them, by complete mystery and happenstance. And when I look at this whole thing, I feel like, how did all this come to me? I'm a clown. Yes?
A couple of things. I wondered if they told you where they had found them. And secondly, did you say that his wife was a healer?
She knew the herbs. When people were ill, they came to her.
And I wondered if there was sort of I know women couldn't be a full-fledged healer, but if there was some competition there, and that's why she disparaged his.
Absolutely could be. We don't know. It comes to mind. Yes?
Yeah, Leonard, we talked earlier about this at the property, a couple different places. You mentioned to me that the screed that was attacking him publicly was motivated in part because of the distinction at that time about the knowledge of medicine. The establishment of medicine was good for providing this kind of stuff. Can you talk about that?
No, that was Renaudot.
Is that Renaudot?
Yeah, that's the other. That's the other. That's the Englishman. Yes.
A question about strange cures. Do people still take agar?
I don't know.
My grandmother made us drink agar.
Repeat the question, please.
Agar.
Agar.
Your grandmother took agar. Do people still use it?
Yeah.
I don't know. I would go online. Ask the question. Yes.
You had mentioned you encourage people to do something they have no skill in and no knowledge of. And I found that very interesting because the Plains Indians taught everybody in their culture there's this medicine wheel, there's the 4 cardinal directions, and you're born into one of those quadrants, north, south, east, and west. Each comes with a skill set and a way of seeing, doing, thinking. And your job is not to stay in that comfort zone. Your job is to walk the entire wheel and go into these other quadrants where you have no skill and you're disoriented and keep walking. It's exactly what you were saying.
That's it. Yes.
Did you think of asking the bookseller in San Francisco and Washington D.C.?
Yeah, he told me, but someone in England,
That might be another.
I don't know, someone in England bought it. Yes.
How wealthy was he? Like what class was he born into?
He was of a well-to-do class. Yes.
I dropped out of school in the 7th grade. How do you think not going to college helped you be a better scholar? And what is the etymology of the last name Greatrake?
Oh yeah, that's interesting. A rake. You know how someone is named John DuPont? Because their French origin and Pont is bridge. For John of the Bridge, John DuPont. Jacques de la Rivière, Jacques of the river, Rivière is river. So a rake is a fissure in the earth from which lead ore is mined in England. And on our travels, Ian and I passed the Long Rake mine. There were long rakes, short rakes, great rakes, deep rakes. He was born near a great rake, hence the name. And of course, Valentine's Day. I say, lucky he was born on Valentine's Day. What if he had been born on Groundhog's Day? Groundhog Great Rakes. It's got a ring to it.
Did Queen Victoria have anything to do with the changes of medicine and
When you find out, let me know.
I'm very fond of Queen Victoria.
I don't
I
know.
think she changed a lot.
Could be, yes.
Can you tell us a little about your crazy uncle?
Oh, man. Very briefly.
The letter, yes, letter from-
Crazy uncle.
We corresponded for 20 years, once a week without fail. When I was living in Paris, I lived there for 7 years. And he came in 1967 with his sponsor. He never could afford to travel on his own. And Anyway, well, here's one of us. Well, I met her. I don't mention it in the book. I changed his name, but if any of you know the name Jerry Giesler, who was a very big Hollywood lawyer in the 50s, 40s, and 50s, clients Charlie Chaplin, Marilyn Monroe, Errol Flynn, and she was married to him. He died and left her $1 gazillion. She was not well traveled and not very intelligent. And she wanted to travel, and she met my uncle. And she became his sponsor. So they traveled to London, and they're staying at the Hilton Hotel, and they're sitting at a restaurant the next day, and she says, this gives you an idea of her mentality. Arthur, I noticed the clothing sizes are different here. The money is different, the time is different. Tell me, do children here have the same age as children in America? That's in one of the letters. But one of them I know by heart, him trying to get me married. Dear Lenny, while in Zagreb, Yugoslavia, where I was staying at the elegant Intercontinental Hotel, I ran into this ravishing young blonde, blue-eyed, buxom, gorgeous creature of feminine pulchritude, who, when informed of being a rich American, that's me, made a play for me to the extent that I almost left the aging dowager I was traveling with to run off with her. I immediately surmised that she would be an ideal match for you, and am currently endeavoring to wrangle her back to America. Who knows? This could be the big home run. So you can virtually pick this up anywhere and get a laugh. And let's see, I'll just get one of my favorites. One of my favorites are Dear Lenny, regretfully, I am a successful failure in my chosen avocation presently, and only hope that the future will hold some form of delayed activity that will enhance my current non-activity when it comes to doing something constructive and, most important, remunerative. Being an incorrigible optimist does help, but at times even that is not enough. I never give up on the simple theory that when I look the least, I'll garner the most. Hopefully. But one bright star in the seemingly ominous current past is that the cherry season will be at its height the first Sunday in June, and as usual, you can be sure I'll be up to visit you in Berkeley. He was a fruitaholic, and a number of letters are about fruit. I look forward to idyllic journey of driving up to see you and arriving at the bewitching hour of 3 o'clock in the afternoon, depending on a stop in Pismo Beach, for delicious, delectable strawberries, on and on and on. Anyway, this will be out in about a week. This is a fruit copy. And there you are. What else can I tell you? Anything else?
Are these books in local?
No, they're not. You can buy them online. Okay, I thank you all very much.